All right, this is Gifted Hands, Chapter 12. If you have not listened to the other Ed puzzles before this, go back and do those first. Make sure that you're writing a summary in your assignment in the classroom for each chapter that you read. It can be a bulleted list or a paragraph, either way, as long as it's your own words and not copy and pasted off the internet. Make sure that you're doing that after you read or listen to each chapter. So if you're following along in our book, Gifted Hands, we're going to start on page 81, chapter 12. Patrick and Benjamin Binder. I don't know if it's Binder or Binder, but either way, kind of close. Patrick and Benjamin were craniophagus Siamese twins. That means when the boys were born, their heads were attached. Twins like this are so rare that it happens only once in every 2 million births. And most craniophagus Siamese twins die at birth. Doctors do not understand what causes this to happen. Most believe that twins grow from one egg that doesn't completely separate. A few believe the babies separate, then grow back together. Patrick and Benjamin seemed to be healthy babies in every other way. Their heads were joined at the back, so they were facing away from each other. That meant they could move like normal babies. As long as they remained attached, they would never be able to walk, crawl, sit, or turn over. Oh, wait, I misread a sentence a second ago. That meant they couldn't move like normal babies. As long as they remained attached, they would never be able to walk, crawl, sit, or turn over. They couldn't even see each other. All right, page 82. Not long after their birth, the Binder babies' German doctor contacted Johns Hopkins to see if surgery could separate the twins. Ben looked over the boys' records and studied the available medical research. He knew the surgery would be difficult. He also knew it was Patrick's and Benjamin's only hope for a normal life. The surgery would be the challenge of a lifetime, a type of surgery Ben could expect to perform only once. It would require 70 medical personnel, 7 pediatric anesthesiologists, 5 neurosurgeons, 2 cardiac surgeons, 5 plastic surgeons, and dozens of nurses and technicians all working together in one operating room. Ben and 3 other doctors who would be involved, Craig Dufresne, Mark Rogers, and David Nichols, planned to fly to Europe to examine the boys and meet their parents. While there, Dr. Dufresne would insert balloons under the twins' scalps to help stretch the skin. The extra skin would be needed to cover the boys' skulls after they were separated. Growing so much new skin would take several months. But just 2 weeks before Ben was scheduled to fly to Germany, burglars broke into the Carsons' home. Among the items stolen was Ben's passport. He couldn't go overseas without it. Ben asked the police investigating the break in if they thought he might get his papers back. No chance, the police responded. The thieves will just throw them away. Ben called the passport office. I'm sorry, Dr. Carson, he was told. We can't replace your passport in such a short time. Lord, Ben prayed, if you want me to help with this surgery, you'll have to get me a passport. 2 days later, the police called. A detective had found Ben's passport and other stolen documents in a garbage container. Ben was able to go to Germany to examine the twins after all. The surgical team at Johns Hopkins spent 5 months preparing for the separation surgery. They had 5 3-hour dress rehearsals during which they practiced the procedure with life-size dolls attached with Velcro. After each practice round, the medical personnel will discuss the procedure in detail, trying to anticipate anything that could go wrong and how it should be handled. They even marked where each person should stand in the overcrowded operating room. The doctor's plan was to use a combination of hydrothermia, circulatory bypass, and deliberate cardiac arrest. The baby's temperatures would be lowered in order to slow their bodily functions. A bypass would circulate each boy's blood through a heart-lung machine. Doctors also decided to intentionally stop the boys' hearts from beating. All 3 techniques had never been used at the same time. But the surgeons believed that combined strategy offered the best hope to prevent brain damage. Finally, on September 5th, 1987, at 7:15 in the morning, the doctors began the surgery to separate the 7-month-old twins. The anesthesiologist gave the babies medicine to 84 has a picture, so if you're not following along, you should be, because there's a cool picture of Dr. Carson. Anyway, help them sleep through the surgery. The heart surgeons inserted monitors to keep track of how well the boys' hearts were doing. Next, Ben began the incisions in the baby's scalp. He cut away an area of the skull, preserving the bone so it could be used to shape and build two separate skulls for the boys. The doctors then worked on the dura, the tough membrane that covers the brain. This had many irregularities that Ben and the other doctors had to work around. Slowly and carefully, they snipped and cut at the places where the two boys were joined. When the doctors came to the part of the boys' brains called the torcula, they found the twins shared a single torcula that was much larger than normal. Ben started to cut the torcula to divide it, and the babies began to bleed profusely. The doctors immediately connected the twins to heart lung machines that chilled their blood from 95 degrees to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. They also stopped the hearts of both boys and turned off the heart lung machines, halting the blood flow in the babies' bodies. The boys were now in hypothermic arrest. This allowed the doctors to separate the brains of both boys and rebuild the twins' blood vessels without the boys bleeding to death. But they could leave the babies in hypothermic rest for only 1 hour. After that, if the machines were not turned back on to circulate warmed blood back through the boys' bodies, brain damage would occur. Everyone in the room understood the surgery was now a life or death race against the clock. The entire team worked together, all members doing their part. 20 minutes later, Ben cut the final blood vessel that connected the two boys. For the first time in their lives, Patrick and Benjamin Binder were two separate individuals. Ben took over the surgery on one baby, and Dr. Donlin, all right, top of page 86, Donlin Long took over the other. They had 40 minutes left to rebuild the blood vessels for each child so blood could flow through them. Doctors had thought that this part of the surgery would take almost an hour. Too long. To save time, the heart surgeons looked over the shoulders of Dr. Carson and Dr. Long to see what sizes and shapes of replacement tissue would be needed to reconstruct the blood vessels. They cut pieces of pericardium, tissue from around the heart, to match. The doctors did such a good job that Ben and Dr. Long were able to work much faster. Dr. Long finished his twin first. Ben finished his baby with only seconds to spare. "It's done," someone said. The heart lung machines were turned back on and the baby's blood began to flow again. But the danger wasn't over. For the next 3 hours, the doctors fought to control the bleeding from small blood vessels that had been cut during the surgery. Because the blood had to be thinned to run through the heart lung machine, it would no longer clot. Every blood vessel that could bleed did bleed. The surgical team tied off or joined the ends of the tiny blood vessels as fast as they could. To replace the blood the boys were losing, doctors kept giving the babies more and more blood until there was no more. The hospital blood bank was out. Calls were made all over Baltimore. The proper blood type was finally located at the Red Cross Blood Bank. They had 10 pints, which turned out to be exactly what the surgeons needed to finish the surgery. But even after the doctors got the bleeding under control, there was no time to celebrate. The twins' brains were beginning to swell so fast, Ben was afraid the surgeons wouldn't be able to cut the scalps closed. To get the scalps closed. So they gave the boys a drug to put them in a coma and slow down their brain activity. Finally, Ben and the other neurosurgeons stepped back to let the plastic surgeons piece the skulls back together and cover the bone with the scalp tissue. 22 hours after the surgery began, the team walked out of the operating room. One of the staff doctors went to the twins' mother and, with a smile on his face, asked, "Which child would you like to see first?" Ben knew the surgery was just the first step, though a giant step, in the twins' long road to recovery. He began to pray, "Oh God, let both boys live. Let them make it." Patrick and Benjamin Binder remained in a coma for 10 days. During that time, their parents and doctors could only wait and hope and pray. Would the boys wake up? Would they be able to live normal lives? Ben kept telling himself, it's all in God's hands, and that's where it's always been. One day, in the middle of the second week, Ben stopped by to check on the twins. "They're moving," he said. "Look," he moved his left foot. "See?" Later that day, both boys opened their eyes and started looking around. "He can see! They both can see! He's looking at me!" someone exclaimed. Thank you," Ben told God again and again. A few months later, Teresa and Franz Binder went home to Germany with their beloved twin boys. By then, the publicity surrounding the case had made Ben a celebrity. He began to receive referrals from doctors around the country and around the world. He suddenly was in great demand as a speaker, telling his story to all kinds of audiences, young and old. All right, that is the end of chapter 12. So let's make sure, which y'all have heard me say it a million times by now, so I hope that y'all are doing it, that after every chapter, what should you do? Write in your journal. So you should have a summary of every chapter. So when I go to check your summaries, I should see 12 after today. There should be a paragraph or a bulleted list for 12 different chapters. Make sure it's organized that when I look through, I can read, okay, this one's for chapter 1, there's your list. This one's for chapter 2, there's your paragraph, okay? So you decide, paragraph or bullet list, but every single chapter needs to have one. If you look at yours and you do not have certain chapters, go back and skim through that chapter and make sure that you have it in there. All right. Well, I hope that you guys are having a fantastic day. And I hope that y'all have an awesome. We went back to 11. It needs to be on 12. I hope that y'all have a fantastic, amazing Thanksgiving break. And I will be back after Thanksgiving. And I look forward to seeing each of you. And I hope you'll have a great day. Bye.